The story begins with a glimpse into the seemingly ordinary life of a young Frank Abagnale Jr. Frank grows up in a comfortable suburban home with his charming and charismatic father, Frank Abagnale Sr., and his beautiful French mother, Paula. The Abagnale family is a picture of the American dream, but beneath the surface, there are cracks. Frank's father is struggling with financial woes, his business ventures are failing, and he's under investigation by the IRS for tax evasion. The family's seemingly perfect life starts to unravel when Frank's father faces financial troubles. The IRS is after him for unpaid taxes, and he loses everything. The Abagnale family has to move from their big house into a small apartment, and this marks the beginning of Frank Jr.'s disillusionment with the world. His father, once a symbol of success, is now struggling, and Frank's mother, Paula, starts having an affair with another man. This infidelity leads to the eventual divorce of Frank's parents, a traumatic event that pushes 16-year-old Frank to run away from home. With no money and no clear plan, he quickly learns that survival means adapting and thinking on his feet. His first con comes almost accidentally. While trying to enroll in a new school, he decides on a whim to pose as a substitute French teacher. Amazingly, he pulls it off, fooling both students and faculty for a week. This early taste of deception's power emboldens Frank, showing him the potential of his newfound skills. From this point, Frank's cons escalate in ambition and scale. One day, Frank spots a group of pilots walking through an airport. They're dressed in sharp uniforms, surrounded by admiration and respect from everyone around them. To Frank, they represent success and power. In that moment, he decides that he's going to become a pilot, even though he has no idea how to fly a plane. Using his father's tactics of charm and ingenuity, Frank manages to forge a pilot's license, obtain a Pan Am uniform, and create fake payroll checks. He learns the airline industry's ins and outs, and with his boyish good looks and polished persona, he convinces everyone from bank tellers to airport staff that he's the real deal. Frank takes advantage of a little-known rule called deadheading. This allows pilots to hitch rides on planes for free when they need to travel to another city. Frank uses this to travel around the world, living a glamorous lifestyle while cashing fake payroll checks from the airline. Meanwhile, the trail of bad checks Frank leaves in his wake draws the attention of the FBI. Enter Carl Hanratty, a methodical and determined bank fraud agent. Carl is the polar opposite of Frank, serious, by the book, and unyieldingly honest. He takes his job seriously, and when Frank's counterfeit checks start popping up all over the country, Carl becomes obsessed with catching the elusive con artist. He quickly deduces that the person behind the fraudulent checks is young, bold, and highly intelligent. Carl begins tracking Frank across the United States. He follows leads, interviews bank employees, and meticulously pieces together Frank's movements. It isn't long before he identifies Frank as the mastermind behind the scams. However, each time Carl gets close, Frank manages to slip away, leaving behind only frustration and a trail of taunting clues. One of the most thrilling moments comes when Carl tracks Frank to a hotel in Los Angeles. Believing he finally has his man cornered, Carl bursts into Frank's room. But in a brilliant twist, Frank manages to convince Carl that he's actually a Secret Service agent working undercover to catch the real check forger. Flashing a fake badge and speaking with utter confidence, Frank hands Carl his wallet as proof and walks out the door. It's only after Frank is long gone that Carl opens the wallet and finds it empty. The realization that he's been duped fuels Carl's resolve to catch Frank. Frank's audacious cons continue to evolve. After tiring of the pilot life, he decides to reinvent himself as a doctor. With forged documents and a white coat, he bluffs his way into a job at a Georgia hospital. Frank quickly finds himself in over his head, especially when faced with actual medical emergencies. To cover his lack of knowledge, he relies on his charm and the skills of real doctors around him. One particularly tense scene involves Frank guiding a team of interns through a procedure by asking, "Do you concur?" He manages to bluff his way through, but the close calls begin to weigh on him. Despite his criminal activities, Frank yearns for a normal life. His desire for stability leads him to Brenda Strong, a sweet and innocent young woman, whom he meets while posing as a doctor. Brenda is unlike anyone Frank has met before, naive, kind-hearted, and genuinely in love with him. Frank falls for her, and for a moment, he considers leaving his life of crime behind. He proposes to Brenda and confesses his real identity to her, promising to start anew. Brenda, despite her shock, agrees to stand by him. However, their happiness is short-lived. During a dinner with Brenda's conservative parents, Frank's cover begins to unravel. Brenda's father, a lawyer, asks Frank about his background, probing him with legal questions that Frank struggles to answer. Meanwhile, Carl is still on Frank's trail. The FBI has been closing in, and during Frank's engagement party, they finally make their move. Frank realizes that something is wrong and narrowly escapes by running out of the back door. Brenda is left heartbroken and confused, not understanding why Frank suddenly disappeared. Once again, Frank is on the run, leaving behind the possibility of a normal life. As time passes, the FBI continues to tighten the net around Frank. He's running out of places to hide, and his cons are becoming harder to pull off. Eventually, Frank flees to Europe, thinking he can evade capture by living in a foreign country. But Carl is relentless. He tracks Frank to a small town in France, where Frank is finally arrested by French police. Frank is sentenced to 12 years in prison. For the first time in years, he's not in control. The freedom and excitement of his con artist lifestyle are gone, and Frank is left to face the consequences of his actions. But even in prison, Frank's story isn't over. Carl continues to visit Frank, and over time, they develop a strange sort of friendship. Carl has spent years chasing Frank, but he's come to respect his intelligence and skill. He realizes that Frank's talent for spotting forgeries could be useful to the FBI. Carl convinces the Bureau to offer Frank a deal. In exchange for his early release, Frank will help the FBI catch other check forgers. Frank accepts the offer, and he starts working for the FBI, using his expertise to help them track down criminals who are trying to pull off the same scams he once did. It's an ironic twist. Frank, the master con artist, is now on the side of the law, using his skills for good. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and don't forget to check out our next video.